Okay, so as Ms. Asbury said, my name is Ms. Baltazar. I am the College and Career Readiness Coach for Taft High School. So today I'm just gonna give a general college and career information and resources that are available to your students. I'm gonna try to give you guys as much information without overwhelming you guys. If you do think of any questions, feel free to type them. If you think of them as I'm talking, or if there's something that you want further clarification on as well. So I'll start with first telling you guys a little bit about me. So I am a Fort Worth ISD graduate myself. I obtained my bachelor's degree from Texas A&M College Station in Community Health and my master's of social work from University of Texas at Arlington. I am a first-gen graduate and also the oldest of 5. So I've been working in pre-college advising for about 6 years now. This one full year here at TAB since October, so a year and a half almost now. And I've definitely been enjoying it and all of the students. As far as things that I'm going to cover, so I kind of created this small agenda. So I will talk about career pathways and resources, college applications, and underneath that college applications, the types of schools, the admissions routes, and the terminology that you might hear, college choices, admissions factors, and the process in general. And then I'll talk about paying for college, so the types of aid, FAFSA, scholarships, and then lastly, I'll cover just some things that your students can do to prepare for their college application process throughout high school. So as far as determining a career pathway, as a TABS and TCC student, our students have access to many resources to help navigate what they would like to do post-graduation.
We started. It already started, I guess.
So for TABS in particular,
we're not silent.
We do have Zello available for our students, and I'll click on these links in just a second so you guys can see what they look like and where to find them. So we do have Zello that we typically offer for our students, and on Zello itself, I'll pull it up so you guys can see with me, but usually it's on the ClassLink page here. And it's usually all the way at the bottom. If some students do take the app off, if you type it in this search bar here, it should pop up though. But when you go to it, I'll view it as a student so you guys can kind of see what it would look like to the students. So I'm gonna view it as a 12th grader. And this is just a good resource as far as getting our students started with seeing what they would possibly like to do and just looking into colleges as well. But we usually have them complete these matchmakers and about me quizzes. So they're usually quizzes that they'll fill out and they'll go through, and it might ask if they like to work with people. They'll put like a 1 to 5, yes I do, or no I don't, and based on that it'll give you these general matches. So I just put random answers, so mine is kind of very random right now because this is definitely not these are not my matches, but based on my answers to these are careers that they suggest for me to look into. And on here, it's just a really good resource for our students to see what kind of degree do you need, what kind of money can you make, a job description here, other similar careers that they could be interested in, what is classified under. So this degree is, or this career is classified under health science. You can see they interview people that work in that field. And then here I like that they have the demand. So students can see, oh, is this career increasing in demand? Is it declining? If it's declining, maybe I don't know if I would want to consider that for a degree program, because then by the time I graduate, the demand is going to be even lower. And it just has a whole bunch of information on here for our kids to go through. And what I do like about it is after they go through and find their careers, they can also go through and look at schools, and they can filter it here based on whatever filters they'd like. So if they know they want to stay in Texas, they can click on that, and then you can click on more filters here. If they want to go to HBCU, they can click on that option, and then they can go here and select how selective they want the school that they're applying to be. how selective do they want it to be, as well as the average GPA, the ACT, the average SAT, if they want a specific sport. So let's say they want basketball offered, they can do that as well. And you can see it narrowed it down to 8 schools that are in Texas that offer these particular filters for me. So that's one resource for our students. We also have many school presentations that we've tried to offer throughout the year to bring in different representatives. We recently had one where a lawyer came in, a physician assistant, as well as I think Ms. Asbury would have to remind me about the third career. I think it was a pediatrician, if I'm not mistaken. And then here shortly, I am looking into creating a career spotlight for our students so they can just feature different careers that they may not have known about. And that way, if it's something that interests them, they'll be able to have more information on that. Now, as TCC students, they do have access to this career coach, which I can show. I just want to be able to log into it because I don't have a login myself. But this is just a career services page in general. And if you go down all the way to the bottom, it has this career coach. And they can log in, and it's very similar to the Zello app. They're able to go through and fill out a career test and then also look at colleges as well. It's taken just a second to load. Yeah, so you can see here on the left, they have where you can take a career assessment, they can search for particular careers or programs. But this is also a really good site just for our students in general. So those are some resources for our students as far as determining a career pathway in case they haven't figured that out yet. Or I mean, I get seniors that sometimes don't know what they're wanting to do either. So it's completely fine not to know. But these are just some really good starting resources for our students to figure that out. As far as our college applications, so this is where a lot of our meet will be. You do have 2 different types of schools. So you have your 2-year schools and your 4-year school. The most common 2-year school are referred to as community college. So that is essentially our students are taking classes through a community college, Tarrant County College. They typically award associate degrees and certificates, and students usually will begin their studies at community colleges and transfer to 4-year institutions to continue their studies. Now, your 4 years are often, you'll hear them as 4-year institutions. They'll award your bachelor or your master's degrees. I believe they also have certificates available for certain things as well, and they can be public or private schools. As far as your application routes, most of the time you'll hear these terms of automatic admissions versus a review. So certain schools will accept students in the top percentage of their class. If they fall into that category, they're automatically admitted. Texas in general does have the top 10% rule. So that just means that if your student falls in the top 10%, for most public schools, they will be accepted. The one exception that I am aware of is UT Austin. They only accept the top 7% of students. But if they apply to A&M or they apply to UNT, UTA, they would be automatically accepted. Now, there are some schools that will, depending on the school, some will accept top 20%. I've seen some that have accepted the top 50%. When we ask students to do that research, we ask them to look at where they would fall in that category as far as acceptance. Now, anybody that's not automatically admitted, that's when they're reviewed for admissions. And usually with the review, they're looking at everything from the extracurriculars to the letters of recommendation, if it's included, essays, the high school and TCC transcript, pretty much looking at the students holistically to decide if the student should be admitted or not. With our early admissions terminology, I know there's a lot of students that like to apply early. So these are 2 terms that you might see on a lot of applications, especially for your bigger schools and private schools. So like TCU, A&M, UT Austin, SMU, a lot of these schools have a early action and early decision deadline. Your early action is a non-binding option. It allows students to apply early and potentially gain admissions earlier than regular applicants. So early action schools will normally send out their decisions early in December, January, February, and it still gives students time until May to formally accept or deny that decision. Now, your early decision is binding. And the way I help kids remember what it means is I usually say early decision means you've decided that you're going there. And so your early decision, just the benefits are more for the top performing students who've identified that that is their first choice college. And since it's a binding agreement, the institutions usually do require their family and school counselor to be aware and require signatures from them. And with that decision, if you're admitted, you must enroll if you're accepted. So just something to keep in mind if you are talking to your student and they say, oh, hey, I think I want to apply here early. If you do see the early action or decision, that's just something to consider if you don't want to be binded to the decision, maybe think about early action. But if you know that if they know they want to go there and you know that and you know that they'll have all the money for it, then by all means do the early decision if needed. As far as picking the right college, this is a conversation I have with a lot of students, but I will say you just have to consider what's important to well, to them and to you guys. So is price a factor? Is it the value that you're getting for the school? Are sports a factor? Do you want certain things, or certain extracurriculars? I know other things that are considered are location. Some people do not want to be out in the country. Some people don't mind being in the city. The student body size. So some students do prefer smaller school with less students, and some schools and some students don't mind that it's a large school with so many students. And then lastly, your majors and the resources available. I know I've had students that prefer bigger schools because they feel that more resources are available to them. So I'd say when you are doing your research, just doing that diligent part of looking at what kind of resources or asking the admissions counselors, because most of the time your admissions counselors are the expert for whatever prospective school they're working for. So they're typically able to help out as far as figuring out what kind of resources are available for my student here. How can you guys help my student with that transition, if that is a factor that's important to you. How many colleges should I pick? So we typically recommend between 5 to 6 schools. We don't recommend for students to apply for more than, we have students apply to 15 or 20. I don't typically recommend that because with every school application, students are going to have to keep up with all the portals for every school, as well as making sure that they're meeting all of those deadlines. So unless they're super organized and they have like a spreadsheet, that usually helps, but most students don't. So we usually recommend 6. And with those 6, we recommend 2 dream schools. So a dream school is a college where your academic credentials fall a bit on the lower end. Or it might even fall a little bit below the school's average range for the cohort of students that they've accepted. And they might be long shots, but they should still be possible. Now, we do ask for them to apply to 2 target schools. So your target school is one where their academic credentials fall well within the range of the college, or the college class that was accepted the year before. And then the 2 safety schools would be where their academic credentials exceed what the average was. So those are like their safety nets. I know one common safety net for students typically is UTA because it's close to home, and a lot of our students are accepted to UTA, and they typically offer students a pretty good amount of money as well. Now, important factors for admission. So these are just some things that they might look at if the student isn't automatically admitted. So you got your GPA, your grades, your rank, your extracurricular activities. So they're going to be looking at what are your students doing outside of school. Are they just going home and playing video games? Are they working? Do they have family responsibilities? Are they involved in any clubs or organizations? I do recommend, at least for the ninth and 10th graders, since they're so early into their high school career, to look into things to do after school, even if it's just volunteering, but just staying involved. They'll also look at test scores, which your test scores will typically come into play more of your junior year when the students take the school-based SAT. So I know this year the date is March 1st for that. So if we do have any parents who are parents of a junior, March 1st will be when they take their SAT exam. So that test could be considered right now. As of next year, I believe there are a lot of schools that are still test optional, but I think some schools are thinking about going back. And even with that, some schools still require students to submit their test scores. They're just, every school is very different on what they are looking for and what they are requiring. And then they'll look at letters of recommendation in case those are required by the school. So typically when letters of recommendation are asked for, I want to say it's typically two. They'll look at those, any essays that are required, and sometimes there might be an interview. The interviewing is a lot more rare with the college admissions, but with more of your Ivy Leagues like Rice or more of your high-end schools, it'll be more common. Now, I put the college application process summarized because this is very condensed. I will say it is a lot that goes into the college application process. And we do go more into depth with our students closer to their junior year. And the plan this year is to give them a senior guide to where it has pretty much this whole process broken down step by step and everything that they need to know. So like when it comes to completing the application, it'll have the different applications that are available to them. And then sending supplemental information. So they'll have instructions on requesting letters of recommendation, supplying your transcript from TCC and from us, how to request those, how to request your fee waivers and access those. So on here I have that our students, after they do apply, they would need to start checking their emails for updates from schools via their school portal. So like I said earlier, every school that the students apply to, they'll typically receive a portal login. And so that would be where a lot of students have to start looking for all the important information. So sometimes they don't get emails all the time. They might get a notification on the portal and they might not see it in their email till later, way later. So we always say to check every portal when they get time. Applying for FAFSA, that'll be a very important part of our junior year as well. And then applying for housing. So students will want to apply for housing once they kind of figure out where they're most likely going, if it's somewhere that requires them to live on campus. So some schools do require students to live on campus their first year, or if it doesn't require them to, then they won't have to complete housing. And then lastly, they're going to review their financial aid and compare offers. And that's something that I offer to help with all students. I'll typically go through all their financial aid offers and we'll look at every school and see how much loans they might have to pull out for each school versus how much free money they're getting and what might be the best value for them. And then lastly, accepting their final choice and informing the other schools that they've accepted another offer. So that's just kind of it summarized. And if anybody has any questions about anything in particular in there, feel free to ask and I definitely can expand on it.
I just
Now,
want to, hey,
yeah.
Melissa, I was just going to interject just to make sure for all you guys, this process right here that she's got on the checklist starts after junior year. They cannot do it during junior year. This is after they have completed, at best, starting maybe with some of the essays and things that are needed maybe by July 1st. Before their senior year. Otherwise, all those things, FAFSA is not done any other time besides October and on of senior year. So just want to reiterate that one more time. Go ahead.
Yes, it's very important. Don't do it before, because I've had students that have applied so early that they applied for the wrong term. So like as Ms. Asbury said, it's typically better to wait till after they've graduated junior year. So that way, in the summertime when those applications are put up, it's for the correct year. And with your FAFSA especially, we don't want students applying for the wrong year or applying early, because you can't do that technically. Now, a lot of students from TAPS will either graduate with their Associates of Arts and Science. So I just put just general differences between them. So in general, your Associates of Arts is intended to focus your study in liberal arts. So it provides a liberal arts foundation. This does not generally include a declared major. And both of these are for students that want to earn a degree and fulfill core curriculum and then transfer to a 4-year, but your Associates of Science is going to be more for students that are wanting to earn a degree in science or engineering, or anything in that science field. So it's more focused on your study in math and science and fulfills your lower division course requirements, including a major in science, or a related discipline. So I pulled that information directly from TCC. So if that doesn't make too much sense to someone, just let me know and I'll definitely go more into detail. But those are the main differences between those two degrees. Now, as far as paying for college, so this is kind of what I'll talk about next. So the types of aid that are available to students. So you typically have 4 different types of aid. You have your loans, your grants, your work study, and your scholarships. So with your loans, it's money that you borrow and you have to pay back with interest. If you apply for financial aid, you might be offered loans. Well, when we say you, we mean your student. And when you receive a student loan, you are borrowing money to attend a college or career school. So you have to repay the loan plus interest. Now, there are different types of loans, and that's something that's more discussed with our seniors when they're looking at their financial aid letters, is the difference between your subsidized and your unsubsidized loans and how much money they should borrow versus how they might accept all of it, but we'll let them know, well, you don't have to accept all of your loan. If you need to accept the loan, you can accept this much and pay for school. So we'll go over that with our students when they are seniors. As far as your grant, so a grant is a form of financial aid that doesn't have to be repaid. So it includes your Pell Grants, your federal supplemental educational opportunity grant, your Teach grant, and then there's an Iraq and Afghanistan service grant as well. So these are typically the most common one you'll see whenever we're filling out the FAFSA will be that Pell Grant. So whenever our students are in their senior year in October, they'll apply for the FAFSA, and we'll be able to tell them once they're done with their FAFSA how much of a Pell Grant they're eligible for, based on their family's financial or your family's financial information. And I'll go more over FAFSA here in a bit, so that way you guys will know what it is that I'm talking about. Now your work study, so the federal work study program, it allows you to earn money to pay for school by working part-time, and you'll earn at least the federal minimum wage, but you might earn more depending on the type of work you do. So your work study is going to depend on when you apply. So this is why we have such an early deadline for students to complete FAFSA. Typically, we ask our students to complete it by December 1st, because funds are first come and first serve. So if a lot of students apply early and get those funds early and there's not that many work study funds available later, they might not be offered the work study, even if they are eligible for it. It also depends on your level of financial aid need and your school's funding level. And then, so lastly, this is the most common aid that you probably hear about is scholarships. So they're a form of aid that helps students pay for college, and unlike student loans, they don't have to be paid back. And they can be combined with other financial aid to cover the cost of attendance. So your scholarships can be combined with grants to help pay for college. And these are based on several factors. It can be based on financial need. It can be based on athletics, academics. I've seen some that are for people that write with their left hand. There's so many scholarships out there and scholarship websites. And I'll go over more different resources for students that are looking for scholarships. So now I'm going to go back to the FAFSA. So your FAFSA is your free application for federal student aid. This is something that we will do with the seniors. So like Ms. Asbury said, the juniors will graduate, and then in October of their senior year, this is what we'll have them do. So it's a form that you need to fill out to get any financial aid from the federal government and help pay for college. It's free and it is a graduation requirement, so all students are required to complete it, even if they don't think they're going to get any aid. And each year, over 13 million students who file for FAFSA get more than 120 billion in grants, work study, and low interest loans. So you just never know what you're going to get from the FAFSA application, which is why we recommend all students to apply. Now, it will be filled out every year while students are in college, and it cannot be filled out before October 1st of the senior year. So please do not fill it out before October 1st of your student senior year. The application opens October 1st every year, and you will fill out the FAFSA for the following school year. So students that filled it out, our seniors that filled it out this year, filled it out for their next school year. So the 23-24 school year, essentially. Now, things that you might need when it does come time to complete FAFSA would be social security number or your alien registration number, your federal income tax returns, W-2s, and any other records of money earned, bank statements and records of investments, your records of untaxed income, and then an FSA ID, which will also complete with seniors during the beginning of the school year. So that way, the FSA ID is essentially a account that's made with the FAFSA website, and it's used to sign, essentially. And we'll have to create one for both parents and for students. So if you've created a FSA ID, I would say definitely try to remember that for students, because that is something we've run into as parents that have had an account before and just not remembering their login information. That definitely helps. These are other financial aid resources for you guys. So I'm going to click on each of these links so you can see. But we do have the Fort Worth ISD scholarship listings. These are really neat and definitely my favorite to recommend to students because they're local scholarships typically, and they are updated monthly, and they go by grade level here. So let's say I'm a sophomore and I want to see what scholarships are available. I can click on that link there. And you can see, oh, well, here's the scholarship listing, and it goes by, if I make it bigger, you can see it goes by due date, and then you can see the different eligibility requirements, how much is awarded, and how to apply here. And this one's in January. February just started, so we might have to give them a little bit of time. But these, like I said, these are updated every month. These are also sent out by the counselor. So Ms. Asbury will send these out to our juniors and seniors, and Ms. Munoz will typically send these out to our freshmen and sophomores. And I have a wall on the back for students that do like the paper application or the paper copies of them, and I keep paper copies typically updated for students to grab those when they have free time. Now, Going Merry is another scholarship website that we began to use this year. And I can't log in right now, but basically what they've done with Going Merry is they condensed all those scholarships from that website, from our Fort Worth ISD website, and have put it on to this website here. So students are able to log in and create an account, and they can search based on certain criteria for scholarships. And all of the students have had to create an account. So your students should have a Going Merry account. That was something that we did last semester, was have them create an account and fill out one scholarship application. So they should have done that. But if your student has it, I would definitely let them know to go ahead and sign up for it. Just because it's, like I said, it's going to have all of this information here just condensed into a website for them. And then these next three are just different scholarship websites that they can use. So you have your College Board, Big Future Scholarship. So the students can sign in and they can, just similar to the other websites, they can search based on their interests, situations, and affiliations for different scholarships that are available for them. Now these are going to be more your national ones for these last three, so not as many local that will be posted. And same, so fast web. Now the only downside of these is that a account would need to be created for each website. So just make sure that if students are creating their multiple accounts, that they can use the same email and password if it makes it easier, but to definitely write that information down for later if they need it. Now, what can I do to prepare now? So I did as a 9th and 10th grader, so I kind of grouped those two together, but these were just big things that I've noticed or that I've suggest for students to do at this point in their high school career. So that includes getting involved. So like I said, their colleges are going to be looking for very well-rounded students. So you'll want to make sure that they're getting involved in either volunteering or, like I said, in some extracurriculars. I know we offer after school activities for our students for, I believe, on Tuesdays and Wednesdays on certain days. We want them to be focusing on their making good grades. So they're going to want to pass all of their classes, especially their TCC classes as well. Taking a career interest test. So they could either use the Zello website, because that's available for all of our students, or any of the other career tests. So that way they can see what kind of careers it suggests. And I usually say do it once a year, because you just never know what might change. I'm definitely not the same person I was in high school compared to now. So I think just over the years, if they retake it, they might find new interests or things that they were interested at one point, they might find out that they didn't like it after all. Take a practice PSAT. So like I talked about the testing earlier with your college admissions, students in 9th and 10th grade will typically take the PSAT, which is the practice exam for the SAT. So definitely try to do good on those. We do have students, sometimes if a student makes a really good grade, they could qualify as I believe they have National Hispanic Scholars, or they have different programs that students could qualify with a high enough score. And then making sure that they're tracking their accomplishments and awards. So when they have the award ceremonies, making sure they keep those or write those down, because when they do apply, they'll be asked about all of the awards and the accomplishments that they've had throughout high school. So it really helps for them to write that down, or make sure that they put it in like a folder or somewhere to where when they are seniors and they do have to go back and remember everything that they've achieved and that they've gotten, they'll have all that information for themselves. And then I put on here learning more about colleges. So we try to expose our students to colleges with our college trips, and also by bringing in different college reps during the school year. But we can only do so much, so it definitely helps for students to do the investigating on their own, especially if we can't tell them about every school out there. I definitely try to, but we definitely can't. And so it helps for them to go and do their own investigating and see if maybe they find a school that I haven't discussed that they like, and asking me about it. And then thinking about their summer plan. So maybe instead of just not doing anything in the summer, thinking of something productive they can do, whether it's maybe they are looking into getting involved or volunteering in the summer, or maybe they decide to take some extra classes, whatever that case may be. And then lastly, exploring scholarships. So I will say, just a caveat for 9th and 10th grade, scholarships are a little bit harder to find, but they're not impossible to find. So just like they had those listings on the website, having students go through and apply for some. I got a scholarship as a junior, and I think I got one as a sophomore. So it's definitely doable. It's just actually applying for them. Now, as an 11th grader, so pretty much continuing the things that you've done as a 9th and 10th grader. So continuing your involvement in good grades. This might be a time for you to create a resume. So a resume that will have like what career experiences you've had, what extracurriculars you've been involved in, your grades on there. This would also be a good time for them to study for the SAT exam, because they'll take that in the springtime. So the more they study, they might make a better score. And sometimes it really does make a difference between, some schools have where if you're in the top 20%, you have to have this certain SAT or ACT score to be automatically accepted. They could choose not to submit that, but then they go through the review process. And then this would also be a good time to start visiting colleges. So as a junior, students do get 2 college visits that are excused. So they can go visit a college and all they have to say is, oh, hey, I need a note for school. They get a note for school and it's excused. They get 2 of those as juniors and 2 as seniors. And then applying for just even more scholarships in general. So as a junior, there's going to be a lot more scholarship opportunities. I put meeting with your counselor. So Ms. Asbury is very diligent about meeting with our students when they're juniors and when they're seniors. So just meeting with her before they go off into the summer. And then start thinking about recommenders in case they need recommenders for scholarships or for college applications. It'd be a really good time to start thinking about that. Our students with the recommenders, they want to choose somebody that can write a really good letter that knows them. I wouldn't choose somebody necessarily that they just met. So if they just met somebody maybe a couple months ago, they say, oh, I'm going to use this person as a recommender. That might not be as strong as a recommendation letter as somebody that's known them for 2 years or more. And then I put here in the summertime, they can begin to work on their applications. Like Ms. Asbury stated earlier, typically they won't be available until I believe late June, early July, that they'll be able to start those applications. But once they do open, the students are able to start early if they wanted. We did have some students that applied in the summertime before their senior year even started. And we'll make sure that they have some of the resources they need for that process if they do decide to start early. Now, as a 12th grader, just pretty much similar things. They can continue to visit more campuses. This will be more of like they're going to make their final list of colleges and they'll begin applying for their colleges. They might have to, if they decide they do want to use their test scores, they might decide to retake their SAT or ACT. And FAFSA, so they'll have to complete their FAFSA as a 12th grader. And then just really, this is these 2 here, just comparing your offers and packages. So having the students make the best decision that's for them, but also meeting the deadlines. I know that's been a big concern lately. It really is just making sure when you do your research that you're writing down those deadlines and that you're being diligent not to miss them, because there have been important deadlines missed in the past and you just miss out on really good opportunities in some cases. So we don't want our students to miss out on those opportunities. We try to do our best to send reminders if it's something regarding like T3, which I know that's what they discussed last week. So if y'all haven't heard about it, I definitely recommend watching that video next week. And that is all that I have. So if anybody has any questions, I'll stop sharing my screens. That way I can see everybody.
We didn't have any pop up in the chat while you were talking, but I do want to have a couple of clarifying things that she said. So for the scholarships, she was talking about which ones you have to pay back versus a loan. And some of those scholarships are broken into categories of merit and need. And so on the ones that she was talking about for merit-based scholarships, that's all based on the student's academic record. So if a student has high academics, they have high test scores, those merit-based scholarships are issued by the institution once they have been accepted and they have looked at their transcript and their test scores. Need-based aid is what she was referring to more from your financial aid, which is either FAFSA if you are a U.S. citizen, if the student is a U.S. citizen, or TASFA, which is this Texas application, also a free application, but that's for state aid if the student does not have their own social security number. So both of those are based on income level of you as the family. And I know sometimes those get a little bit tricky as to, well, whose income do we have to report? And there's a lot of detail with that. So senior year, if there's any question when you get to that point, please ask us. We'll be glad to go over that with you. It's pretty involved. But those are set by the state and the federal government. So you have 2 opportunities. When we talk about the scholarship she's talking about referencing from the website or the ones that I'm sending out through email, those are good for they're called outside scholarships. So they're good for any of the colleges that they're going to be applying to. It's not linked to any one school. And so if they get an outside scholarship, let's say it was from Tylenol or Toyota or some other national scholarship or whatever that is not linked to a particular school. They win that scholarship. And then at the time of their senior year, when they have finally decided, like usually in the spring, here's where I'm going to go, this is definitely where I'm going to be headed, then that usually is a conversation with the people who had the scholarship, and they say, okay, I'm going to this university, and that scholarship is sent to the university. You don't typically see any kind of outside scholarships writing checks anymore to the student. They'll just hold off until that final decision is made, and the student tells them, hey, this is where I'm going. Then you have the ones that are specific to the institutions themselves, which are your colleges and university sites. They have sometimes a separate scholarship application. So a student would apply for admissions, and then they also have to do a separate one for the scholarships particular to that university. So every university has their own set. It is not a common scholarship kind of deal for all universities. It doesn't work that way. So you've got two sets that you're kind of working from. And again, those, when they're specific to a university, are going to be senior year only, because they have to have applied and or been accepted depending on how the scholarship works. And then it's up to the university to decide or tell you, hey, these scholarships are renewable over the course of 4 years, or some of them may just be a one-time deal their freshman year, and that's all they get. So when we have our students apply for colleges, they are applying as freshmen. I want everybody to hear me, as freshmen, not transfer. Even though they have associate degrees, some of them have, or if they don't have their associate, but they have a lot of credits, it doesn't matter. They are applying as freshmen because this is the first time that they are going to college outside of their high school diploma. So when they apply as freshmen, there are actually more scholarships typically given freshman year, so that's an advantage. But where the credits come in is after they've been accepted, after they've looked at those financial aids, they've sat down with they know what school they're going to go to. They're going to sit down with an academic advisor who's going to look at their TCC transcript and all the college credits that they've earned, and then advise them accordingly. And depending on how many credits they have, if they've earned 30 college credit hours from TCC, typically at that point, they would say, okay, you've got enough credits. We're going to consider you a sophomore, which is like your second year of college. If you have your full 60, then most of the time they're going to look at that and say, yeah, we take all 60 of these credits. Now you're going to be classified as what we would call like a junior, or that after that second year. So that's how those things kind of come into play. I know we didn't hit on those exactly, but I do want to clarify those a little bit. I also want to touch on the volunteering that she mentioned. When students are building up their resume, one thing to remember is it's not necessarily quantity over quality. It is very obvious to an admissions officer who looks at thousands upon thousands of applications and resumes that if a student, their senior year, is now participating in 10 different things, just so they have what they were hoping for as activities to put on their application, that is a red flag that student is just doing it to kind of beef up their application. And it's not anything that they're necessarily passionate about. It's just something that they decided to throw on there so they had something on their resume or to put on that section of the application. What we want them to do is what Ms. Baltazar was talking about. So as they start their freshman, sophomore year, you start building on things that they're involved in. So keeping track of those things that they do in the summer, keeping track of the volunteer hours, finding something that they're really passionate about, because the more difficult it is to get accepted in a school, we call those very competitive schools. If it's hard to get into, those schools are looking for longevity. They want to see things that students have been doing over the course of multiple years. And in the course of those multiple years, that they've maybe even moved into some type of leadership role. So the point behind that is that colleges don't want one-dimensional students. They want a well-rounded student. And so when you go to college, Most of the things that are happening on that campus are done by students. And so if you're the type of person who, like, your student just comes home, they make straight A's, but they just come home, they don't really do anything else. Well, they're not going to get involved in college either, is kind of the mindset there. And it's not contributing and making that campus better. And so they want those well-rounded students. But again, for those very competitive schools, they're looking for duration and they're looking for leadership. Just a caveat from the high school side, we do offer a graduation cord for volunteer hours. We do ask that students have a mix of volunteer hours so that they're not like all done in the nursery at Sunday school, or they're not all done just at maybe the food bank of Tarrant County. So we want them to get experience in a couple of different things. But if they are senior this year, because of COVID shutdown, we did modify the amount. So for seniors this year, they need 62 volunteer hours. They'll turn that stuff into me the first week of May of their senior year. We do not collect that stuff from students. So in ninth grade, if they volunteered 25 hours, they keep that. They got to keep up with it until they're seniors. We do not have a place to store that. If they are a junior right now, they need 75 to get that graduation cord. And then if they're ninth or 10th grade, because we only are collecting hours from that started between 9th and 12th grade, they're back to our 100, which is what you guys knew about when you came to tabs. So the expectation there is that they kind of do 25 each year and document those. That will get them a cord for graduation. So just a little FYI, again, not collecting anything until May of senior year when they get there. The PSAT that she was talking about for practice, 9th and 10th grade, that is truly just for practice. The only year that they can get merit-based scholarships is if they are finalists, and that's junior year only. So the 9th and 10th is good preparation. Junior year is when they get the National Hispanic recognition. There's also an African American scholar. Then there's the National Merit Scholars. Those are only during junior year. Let's see. And then the question that was asked at the very beginning for the Texas Promise. So I wanted to be clear on two things. So like there are some savings plans that parents can do for their kids before they get to college that have to be used for direct cost of either tuition or fees, or it could even be books, depending on if it's a 529 plan or this thing called the Texas Tuition Promise. And so those are things as parents that you can sign up to do. They're kind of like ways to save in advance. But then there's also something that's which I think is what was being alluded to, that there are some universities that are typically our public universities in Texas, that if you make under a certain amount of income, that you get tuition free. They don't always cover fees, but it might cover tuition. And so like UTA, that's University of Texas in Arlington, like they used to call theirs the MyMav Promise. TCC has one called Stars of Tomorrow. Let's see, UNT used to have the what was theirs, the Emerald Eagle, I think is what theirs were. So some of those have gone away. I don't know if they are still as prevalent as they were several years ago. Ms. Baltazar, do you want to speak on that at all?
I would say because those are readily changing every year. They used to have the publication that would have all the schools that offered those kind of programs, but I know that hasn't been updated for a really long time. So I think some schools still have it. Like I know A&M still does the Aggie Assurance, and they have it to where it's between 60 and 150,000. They offer some aid, and if it's under 60,000, they cover tuition. Now, as Ms. Asbury said, just pay attention to that wording, because that's always the caveat, is if it says tuition and fees, they don't cover housing. So like, let's say you do decide to try the Aggie Assurance and you get your fees covered and your tuition covered, you still have to worry about your housing and meals, which typically at most schools on average, it could be between 10 grand or more. So I would say look on the school's websites. I can try to compile a list of those, but I'm not too sure off the top of my head all of the current ones. I know some still exist, like they've changed UTAs to the Blaze Forward now. But I'm not too sure of all of them just on the top of my head.
So yeah, and something happened. I don't know a couple years ago what made the change, but it's a little bit harder to find like those comprehensive lists where we could just send those out. It's really you kind of looking on the websites of the colleges that you're interested in. It definitely will show up once the financial aid is given from FAFSA information or TASFA, because that's need based. Those are all things based on family income. So once the financial aid has been processed, which means the student has been accepted, then you'll kind of see whether or not that was part of it. But to research it ahead of time, they've made it a little bit more difficult on us to do that. Because it used to be very widespread, wide open, like we would get information on, oh, here's all the schools doing this and what's the income level, and something happened where that's not as easy to find anymore. So I know that's not the best answer that you were probably wanting, but that's kind of where we're at with it. Any other questions of anything that came up? I know for this year, juniors and seniors, the presentation she was talking about earlier for careers, we had a pediatrician who also was working with mental health, came and spoke to our students about how to get there. We had a physician's assistant come and speak to them. We have a lot of interest in that avenue. And then we had someone from the FBI, because I know some students had mentioned something about criminal justice or being some interested in some of that. So they got to hear from those speakers. We also had a speech pathologist that was supposed to be there. She had to cancel, so I'll probably reschedule her at some point. But those are things that they have gotten. They got that presentation in January. So we are trying to get that exposure out there. A lot of it is just students taking advantage of things and making sure that they are looking at their emails. I don't always send everything out to parents. I do send it out to the students. So checking their Fort Worth ISD email will have any scholarship that's coming across my desk. Like right now, one big one that's open for juniors is the Horatio Algier scholarship that just opened in December and it finishes in March. So like I just sent that out, but I didn't send it out to parents. I sent it out to the students. When we get those bulletins every month, that's sent to the student. So while I understand as you as a parent, may be the one kind of facilitating, hey, you need to, how many scholarships have you done? I do want you to understand that the bulk of the responsibility is on the student. So you are there to like remind them, help them sit down, have a quiet place to get those things done. And have them check, pull it up for me. Let me see what Miss Asbury sent you. Let me see if Miss Baltazar sent anything out. Because senior year, Miss Baltazar put together a beautiful packet for seniors of all the things that year to kind of expect. And it was done great, but you've got to open it and read it. So as a parent, I would be just asking them to kind of periodically check or give, they can give you the username and password and you can pull that information for them and make sure they're doing it. But please know that with scholarships, most of them do require an essay. Kids really freak out about the essay. It's not a big deal. They can come to us, either Ms. Baltazar or myself. They have their writing lab downstairs here at TCC who they make an appointment with and will proofread that. We have excellent English teachers here on campus who would be willing to edit and give proof for anything. And that essay is done like maybe one solid essay. Sometimes they might have to do two total, but they can reuse that essay on almost all the scholarships because they all ask about the same thing. So if they write one solid, well-written, edited, proofed essay, then they can keep using that over and over and over again. And it's really not as big of a time issue as a lot of students think. So just keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is that this is free money. And so they got to spend some time putting thought and being very deliberate with their essays because it's free. They don't have to pay that back, and people don't want to just throw money out there if you're not serious about it. So taking the time to write that essay is going to be a lot more money in their bank as they go on to do whatever they're going to do for their college stuff. And it takes maybe 25 scholarships before you get one. Like, you know, it's not an expectation like I'm just going to do 1 or 2 and oh, I didn't get it. It's really more the expectation. I did 10 to 15. I need to do a lot more because I'm probably not going to get any of these, because that's how competitive that money is. So just kind of be aware of that, because everybody wants the free money. Everybody wants to be like, yeah, how do we get that? It's going to be in doing the due diligence, writing the essays. And like I said, it's not 25 essays. It's like 1 or 2 solid essays that they can just reuse. So that's something that in the summers, when school's not as heavy, over breaks, those are great times when they're not, you know, really heavy on homework and studying and all that stuff, to kind of hash those out. So anyway, that's our time. So it's 7:04. I appreciate you guys being here. Anyone have any last thoughts before I stop? Okay. All right. Well, you guys have a great night. Our next one's going to be on February the 27th. And I will try to send out a reminder, and that one's going to be with the UNT Health Science Center. And that's going to be talking about the bachelor level of biomedical science program that's brand new for them. So, all right. I hope to see you guys then. Have a great night. Thanks, Miss Baltazar.